All right. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a little bit of a framework and, maybe some ideas based on my experience of how to overcome fear, a little bit nerdy stuff here. And a lot of stuff that I do is based on neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm really big on the neuro-linguistic programming deal. Uh, you guys, it's called NLP, and Cuz Everett, he's a big practitioner. I've been practicing NLP for 20 plus years. And NLP is a psychological mode of influence. So you can influence people like crazy, like to the point where you can, not that you can make people do what they don't want to do, but you really can make people do what you want them to do, that they're not against doing what you want them to do. It's a little bit crazy, but it's a powerful form of influence, right? So hopefully y'all can see that overcoming fear slide. So here's the deal. As you heard from our guest, it's really important to learn how to control your emotions and not to be ruled by your emotions. Emotions can make you do some crazy things, both good and bad. The problem is when you make decisions and you're ruled by emotions, then you are not ruled. You are not progressing in a logical manner towards your goal that you want to accomplish because you never know what emotion is going to be a positive emotion that'll propel you forward or a negative emotion that takes you backward, right? And so this whole idea of NLP, one aspect of NLP is learning how to change your state, okay? We don't have power because we are constantly reacting to the outer world. You are either consciously creating your life or you are reacting to it. By John Kehoe, wrote a book, Mind Power into the 21st Century. So here's kind of a basic thing with NLP is we process information about the world through our five senses, right? Our sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. And so our perception of anything that happens to us will create a thought and feelings that then becomes our belief about that thing that happened to us. And then these beliefs determine how we experience the event. And here's the problem with beliefs when we've created them is sometimes our beliefs are limiting beliefs that hold us back from becoming great in whatever we're trying to accomplish. And so over time, what happens is we establish patterns in our beliefs that determine whether we can overcome difficulties in our lives or give in to sadness, despair, and fear. And what we believe and what we perceive in our world is mega important, gang, right? The other thing that how we experience our world besides the senses is our imagination. And here's where it can get really crazy because when an idea enters in our minds, what our brain does is it creates a picture of it. And then our brain, it can't tell the difference between something vividly imagined, like a picture, and what's real. It only understands what it visualizes, right? So it'll process that image as if it were real. And you guys know this is true. How do we know this is true? Like, think about a song back when you were in high school or a song at your wedding. I promise you, when you hear that song, it takes you back to that moment that song meant something to you. Like for me, one of the songs is Reasons by Earth, Wind, and Fire, the live version, right? And some of y'all, well, most of you probably don't know Earth, Wind, and Fire. They're a soul band back in the 70s. I'm a big Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, been to many concerts. But that song Reasons takes me back to high school, and I'm slow dancing with my girlfriend in her backyard, right? We were upright, okay? But it takes me back to that. I can feel her body next to mine. I can imagine it was in California in the evening. I can hear the song. I mean, it just takes me back. Whether it's real or not, my body is reacting as if it is real. And that's the power of imagination, but it can also do the opposite. Because what your brain has projected based on the information it has is it will sort through your memory and it creates its own specific to you experience of an event, right? And it may not be exactly what the world actually is, but it's your experience that you create that becomes your interpretation of the world based on your past, based on what you've experienced. And this is what's crazy about it. So let me kind of show you how this works in the case of how your brain works. So you have something that happens to you, like you're dialing the phone for the first time, you're getting rejection after rejection, and you've made 50 dials and you contact 3 people and they say, no, 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 right? So your past tells you you're not doing very good. You suck at this. You'll never be good at this. And you're going back through memories of when you failed anything you've ever tried. And then you're categorizing this experience into those memories and beliefs about you. All the times that you sucked at doing anything, this goes, dialing the phone goes into that category, right? So then your thoughts about when you sucked at stuff all come back in a flood, which then creates that feeling that you suck, that you're not good at this, which then creates your action of not wanting to dial anymore, right? Which then creates 0 results, right? You all been through this loop, okay? This is how your brain works, man. It filters anything that happens to you, both positive and negative, through what you've done in the past, and then creates thoughts. Thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, actions create results. So thoughts are things. Thoughts are important for you to learn how to control. And the best people out there, the most successful, you talk about any of the top agents in our company are the ones that control their thoughts, right? They can switch to a different thought from a negative one to a positive one that protects their self-image, protects what they're going to do next, right? So where do beliefs come from? Beliefs stem from the meaning your mind assigned to each event of your life. And it's completely biased. So understand this. Your beliefs are biased either for you or against you. Some people come out with an experience of rough times in their life, right? And they're scared of everything that happens to them because everything they've done has come with negative consequences. There's danger around every corner. And then you have other people where everything was rocking, man, smooth, beautiful, right? They had every opportunity around every corner, right? So that personal bias of your beliefs will cloud how you look at something. So that person who had a rocky past is like thinking, man, I dial these leads. It's going to be dangerous because it's going to hurt me. And then you got the other person says, man, I can't wait to dial these leads. And even though I'm getting no's, I'm going to find the person that says yes. Do you see how the same event can be viewed 2 different ways? So our perception maps determine what we see, and it's what generally impacts the meaning that we create and the options that we have. So let's talk about how your brain makes decisions. So there are 4 things that your brain does when it makes some kind of decisions. And it's really how the brain works, because if your brain had to process all the stimulus that you're getting around you brand new every time, you'd be shut down because you couldn't handle the different lights and sounds because your brain's handling as if it's new. No, what your brain does is it tries to create patterns. It creates a way that it can make sense of the world without having to process new information new every time, right? I know I'm getting a little nerdy here, but this is really important for you to understand this whole process. So the first thing that happens is your brain makes assumptions, right? And what assumptions do is assumptions are things that we accept without any proof. The brain doesn't need proof. The brain's looking for a pattern, but it doesn't need proof that what your experience is true. What it does is it assimilates this information so it knows already that it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Okay. So the negative aspect of assumptions is that your brain wants to jump to conclusions. So it processes this new information, and then it wants to complete the picture. So when you start dialing these leads, you start going into the home, all the other times if you sold insurance with, the 5 other IMOs that you've been with, it's like, oh man, here it comes again. And it's going to try to complete the picture when that picture is not true, not real, because our experience with the alliance will probably be different because you've got more help now. Leads are different, whatever the case is, right? But it tries to nudge its way in there to give you that same negative feeling of all the other times that you've went into someone's house, right? And so what happens, instead of letting all those other negative experiences get into your purview, you need to focus so you can improve and break down this next appointment, that this is a new thing, has nothing to do with anything I've ever done in the past. This is a new appointment, this is a new client, right? I'm focusing on helping this particular client no matter what happens. And you concentrate on that focus, right? Very important aspect of this is that dealing with the assumptions. Okay, another thing your brain does is it deals with generalizations. So it's similar to assumptions, except these are based on patterns. So assumptions are just based on information, but your brain tries to make generalizations in patterns, right? So that it can process information much quicker, in repetitious, when things happen over and over again, then that's why it makes a generalization. So you don't have to relearn things. The problem with making, again, generalizations is that when you have a negative experience about an event, your brain's going to generalize that you're always going to have that problem. Again, you have a bad dial day, you dial tomorrow, you're going to generalize that because I had a bad dial day, I'm going to have a bad dial day now, right? And so what it can do is contribute to a negative view of yourself and what you can do, and it will limit how you see the world and how you can perform. So your brain is working at generalizing. So what's the next one? The next one's deletions. And this one's really an interesting one to me, because deletions happen because you can't possibly handle all the information. So your brain, what it does, it starts dismissing the information that's not necessary, right? So it lets your intuition take over, and you're deleting unnecessary thoughts that can get in the way. So when you're in high performance mode, that's a great thing, because then you're performing, you're not thinking about performing, right? And this is where the top performers can use their intuition and their instincts to perform great, because they're in the mode of not having to think about it anymore. But then sometimes what happens when you start deleting things is you start focusing so closely on what you're trying to accomplish that you're so narrowly focused that it causes you to miss opportunities out there. So you're focusing on a client, selling them life insurance, and also they mention, well, yeah, I've got a 401k somewhere that's been sitting there, for a long time. But you're focused on closing life insurance, that you don't hear that opportunity to possibly do an annuity, right? Because you're focused on that life insurance sale. So sometimes we focus so narrowly through deletions that we don't see the other possibilities that being more broad will help you achieve. Then here's the one that really will mess you up, man, that the brain does, is distortions. So this is what happens when your brain gives too much importance to and meaning to a particular pattern that your brain has developed. So let's say you're having trouble with dealing with the think about it objection in the home, right? Your last 3 appointments, you got to think about it. And then you think, oh no, this always happens to me. I can never catch a break. You start using those limiting words. Always, never, man. Always, never. This totally distorts and gives too much meaning to those experiences. It totally exaggerates the truth, right? It doesn't always happen, and it won't always happen. And So never use always and never, right? Those limiting words will put you in a distortion mode where these things take a whole life of its own that you can't get there. And then these negative thoughts of your performance will cause you to be anxious and depressed. And, you know, all those negative feelings, like you had a sucky day, right? But it's only one day out of 7 days. It's only, 3 hours of my time that some bad happened or, not so good, but I'm looking for the next time, and what did I learn from these last 3 appointments, right? So there's a, sometimes I got to think like our fears. We think that it's a life and death thing when we don't close an appointment or we pick up a phone. Man, it ain't real life and death, right? It's like when these things happen, they can't kill you. No one is going to strangle you over the phone, right? No one's going to take away your birthday. Like let's kind of be real. There are other people in this world that are dying in wars, right? They're dying because of their beliefs. They're getting killed, right? Gang, you're not dying because you're selling life insurance. You're not dying because you're recruiting your family members or your friends into the insurance business. The consequence is not death, right? Let's kind of, put it in perspective of what this really is, right? And kind of calm those distortions, deletions, assumptions, and generalizations. Majority of what we fear is not life or death. We use our imagination sometimes in a negative way, and then we blow these things out of proportion and we give them more power than they actually deserve. And then we permit them to govern our lives. And that is the crime here, is that you let these distortions govern your life. You permit them to determine how far you can stretch out, on your dreams and your goals, the things that you want to accomplish, and how to discover your niche, your thing that will make you great, Anyway, that's one of the worst things that can happen, man. So think about that. What's the worst that can happen? Will it kill me? Will I die? Don't give that any power, right? Don't give that any power. What controls you at any given moment are the stories and ideas that form who you believe you are. So what does this mean? Put more beliefs in you that are based on empowering you to do great things, right? And we'll get into how you do that. I'm going to give you practical things that I've done in my life to make me realize that I'm not the last failure. I am not the last person that yelled at me, right? I am more than all those things that seemingly are trying to take me down, right? You're filling yourself through people, through experiences, and through reframing everything negative into something positive. So here's the key. Your success will be based on how you manage your thoughts, how you think differently about your situation and whatever happens to you, right? How you manage your environment. The problem with your environment is your environment influences your belief about yourself. So if you continue to listen to negative people that try to tear you down, like Justin, Heard, right? Those people that are trying to tear you down, you're going to be broke as an insurance agent. You keep listening to that, it's going to enter into your belief system. And then all of a sudden you can't, because you believe what they're saying is true, right? You got to manage your environment, who you hang around, what you listen to. The most important thing that you can take care of is your eye gate and ear gate. It's what you see and what you hear, right? People try to bring you down, get away from them. Don't listen to them. Negative radio. I don't watch the news, right? If it's important enough, I'm going to find out about it. People are going to tell me, right? I'm not going to hang around losers. I'm going to hang around winners. That's why it's important to go to conferences and events and hotspot meetings to continue to get around the people that are winning, because that will influence your beliefs about yourself that you can win too. You have to control your environment. Controlling your environment and what you let into your head through your eye gate and ear gate will then affect your thoughts. And then when you can control what you think about and how you think about it, that will put you in total control of your destiny. And then managing your desires, right? We talk about the why all the time, right? We talk about the why and our desires and what we want. Now, our desires can be disordered desires, right? Because sometimes desires are driven by ego. The problem with ego-driven desires is that you have to satisfy every feeling that you have. So the feeling of gratification, like instant gratification, your ego will tell you, you got to satisfy that. I want that car. I want that sexy car. And you'll rationalize it saying, well, Alex, how am I going to recruit anybody if I don't drive a nice car? Right? You're going to figure every kind of way because your ego is so big that you want to satisfy every feeling. But remember what happens when you're ruled by feelings? Bad things happen when you're ruled by feelings, right? You have to understand that your desires, the things that control desires can control you, right? You don't want to be controlled by your desires. They're very powerful, okay? Never be a slave to your desire. Let your desires fuel you, but don't be a slave to your desires, right? There's so much here, gang. I'm not going to, these are like hour-long seminars, each of these things, but understand that success is your ability to manage your thoughts, the ability to manage your environment to help create your thoughts and beliefs, and then the ability to manage your desires. So let's get into some practical things. Some of the techniques I've used in my life that has helped me is focus on the task at hand. Don't start thinking about all the possibilities of the future, right? The future hasn't happened yet. What has to happen is now. Now is the most important thing. How we think about what happens now is the most important thing. I can't think about the consequences, 3 moves from now, like 3 appointments from now. I can't think about that client. I got to think about the client that I'm going to, right? I got to think about dialing this next phone number, right? So I remember at the Air Force Academy, we had a survival swimming class. And the reason why I have the 10-meter platform is, man, I was scared to death of jumping off the 10-meter. Now, from the deck, looking up the 10-meter, it doesn't look very far until you walk up those stairs and the ladder, and you get on that 10-meter, and you're looking down, and it's like, oh my gosh, I want to die, right? And so imagine all these freshman cadets that are all on different various steps on the ladder, and I'm up there, and I got to jump off this stupid thing, right? And there's a way to jump off the 10-meter. It's supposed to simulate like you're jumping off a ship, okay, in survival swimming. And we're in our fatigues, and like I kept looking over that edge, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And I looked over, and the more I focused on down below where I was going to fall and die, the more that anxiety kind of crept in. And everyone was yelling at me, come on, man. And the more they yelled at me, the more I couldn't do it. So I had to take the walk of shame, the climb of shame. And I was one of the few. Now, there's other people, more than me, that had to climb down because I couldn't overcome the fear. I just couldn't do it, right? And so finally, I got back up there, the next class. It's like, okay, all I'm going to do is I am going to walk 12 feet, and the platform is like 10 feet. I just got to walk to 12. I got to get to 12 feet, and I'm not going to look down. I'm just going to look straight ahead at the other end of an auditorium, right? And so I just focused on walking 12 feet so that I knew that if I walk 12 feet, I'm going to be letting gravity take over. And I just turned my brain off. And all I did was focus on what I had to do was walk 12 feet. And I did it. And it was like that exhilarating feeling, after I safely landed in the water, was like, oh my gosh, this rocks. I can do this now. So the same thing happened to me when dialing. The first time I started dialing the phone, it was like, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I had my schedules. I'm dialing at 6 p.m. After I got off work, I'm dialing 6 p.m. And so I look at the clock and I've got my leads. I'm sitting in my basement in my house and I'm ready to dial. And it's like 5 to 6. And it's 4 minutes to 6. It's 3 minutes to 6. And then my brain said, you know what? People are probably eating dinner. They're probably not going to answer the phone. So you know what? I'm going to start dialing at 7. And so, I go blow it off and then I come back down. It's like, okay, 15 minutes to 7. I'm rearranging my leads. I'm reading my leads. I'm trying to make up a backstory on every agent, right? They tell you not to do it. Well, I was doing it. And then it's 10 minutes till 7. Then 5 minutes till 7. Then the countdown is like, they're probably watching the news. So you know what? I'm going to dial at 8 o'clock. So I blow it off for another hour. Like, how many of y'all been there? And so 8 o'clock comes. It's like, you know what? They're probably watching their favorite show. They're not going to answer the phone. Tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to dial tomorrow. Anybody been there? So the next dial day, I remembered this incident at the academy off the 10 meter. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to dial the 10 dadgum numbers. I'm just going to focus on dialing 10 numbers. And then whatever happens after that is whatever happens. I'm not going to worry about what happens after that. I'm going to dial those 10 dadgum numbers. And then I did. And then I kept dialing. And so, like Justin said, once I started dialing, it became easier and easier to dial. So focus on the task at hand. Here's the next one, is measuring fear versus consequence. The fear of the consequence of not doing what you're going to do versus the fear of doing the right thing. In other words, what is the consequence of me not dialing the phone versus the consequence or versus what I ought to do, which is to get free because I love my kids and love my family, right? Which road am I walking down? I got into the insurance to get free for my family. I want to spend time with my kids. I want independence. I want to work at a stupid job, my recruiting job. My consequence of not doing this was being forever limited in a job that was making me miss my children. That was a consequence, right? What should I do versus what are the consequences of not doing? And what I figured out is what I should do was greater than the consequence of not doing what I should be doing. And so here's what I did. I tricked my mind. I put a picture of my kids. I have this great picture of my kids in their pajamas, all hugging each other on our couch. And I put that picture in front of my phone right next to my leads. And in my mind, I was thinking, I don't want my kids to see a daddy that would be afraid. I had to be the hero to my children. Now I was going to let that overcome the consequences of not doing it. Because the more I was not dialing the phone, the more I was going to be a slave to the job. And I was no longer going to be a slave to a stupid job because it was worth the fight to be with my kids. And when I saw the picture of my kids, I got the emotion that I am going to be their hero. So that fueled me, and it continues to fuel me, gang. Continues to fuel me.
One of the things you see with people all the time is that maybe they're trying to stumble forward towards their ideal, as poorly defined as it might be, but then they're afraid, right? They're afraid about what they might encounter, and that stops them because fear does stop people. It freezes you like a prey animal, and so people move ahead, but then they get afraid, and then they stop moving ahead. And that's not so good because negative emotion is a really powerful motivator. So we're more motivated by negative emotion than positive emotion. Quantitatively speaking, you can measure that. And that's, I think, because we can only be so happy, but we can really be suffering and dead, So we have to pay more attention to the negative. And that's bad because the negative can stop you. And then in my clinical practice, I often talk to people who are trying to make a difficult life decision and they're weighing out the costs and the benefits of making the life decision, And one of the things I always talk to them about is, wait a second, that's an incomplete analysis. You have to weigh out the benefits and the costs of doing this. And you have to weigh out the costs and benefits of not doing it. And that's not the same as the zero that you assume that you're starting with, right? Because to not make a decision it also has a cost. And sometimes the cost of not making a decision is far worse than the cost of making a decision, even if the decision is risky. And so one of the things you can derive from that, and this is very useful, I think, is that this is also, I think, why it's so useful to contemplate your mortality, so to speak, is you're screwed no matter what you do. And that actually frees you, is that you have path A that has catastrophes and you have path B that has catastrophes, and you don't get to have the no catastrophe path, but you get to pick which one. And that's really something, because if you know that there's terrible risk associated with everything that you do and don't do, then you can afford to take some risks, because you're not, and this is all within the ark metaphor. I'm still making the case that despite the fact that your life is essentially catastrophic, you can make a covenant with the highest ideal, and that will take you through it the best way possible. I'm still making that case. So then you think, okay, well, I'm trying to make this decision. I'm going to go try to do something difficult. And isn't that terrifying? And then you think, yeah, but wait a minute. What's really terrifying is not doing it. And then you think about the cost of not doing it. So in the future authoring program, we have people do this little meditative exercise, which is, okay, just think about your insufficiencies by your own definition, right? The way that you don't do what you know you should do. About the things that you do that you shouldn't do, that you know you shouldn't do beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? There's some things like that. That's bad habits and poor aim and all of the resentment and hatred and aggression and unresolved conflicts and all those things that are dementing you and warping you, and then think, okay, those things get the upper hand, man. They get the upper hand, and they take you the worst possible place you could go in the next 3 to 5 years. What exactly does that look like? And so you sketch all that out, and you think, hey, I don't want to go there. And so the next time that a temptation comes up, you think, well, it'd be a lot better for me if I didn't succumb to this temptation. It's like, that's kind of weak, eh? You'd look a little better if you didn't eat like a cheesecake a day or something like that. That's something, but it's not the same as, I'm going to have diabetes and I'm going to lose my damn leg in 5 years if I don't get my eating under control. That's motivating. And so then the temptation comes along and you think, oh, how about no? Seriously, how about no? Not just because a higher good would be obtained if I avoided it, but because a terrible catastrophe would be averted if I didn't. And so, so you want to get your fear behind you, right? You want to get it behind you where it's pushing you forward instead of in front of you where it's stopping you. And you get your fear behind you, pushing you forward by actually thinking through the consequences of not putting your life together. And the least of those is that you waste it and suffer, right? Because you're going to suffer anyways, man. So you waste it and suffer. That's a bad deal. Because maybe if you're going to suffer, you could at least do something noble and glorious and upright and powerful and honorable and admirable and helpful and difficult. That's just so much better. And maybe that's good enough so that you think, hey, little suffering, it's basically worth it. At least it's a way forward, At least it's a way forward.
A greater cause. This is another way that you can trick yourself from overcoming fear, is that what is your cause? What is, we could talk about why, and we talk about this, talk about that. It's like I love what Andy says, like, maybe you don't have to find the overarching why. Maybe you need to figure out what you're trying to get away from, right? The greater cause is to not be broke. How about that? Why don't you just let your bank account motivate you, right? Look at your bank account and then decide, should I dial or should I not dial, right? Is that going to, now I know I'm going to type A mode. Sorry, Jeff Bright. I'm going to type A mode. I need to talk to the type Bs. I got to figure that out. How do I talk to a type B? Anyway, the greater cause. One thing that happened to me when I had a terrible day in the field. I had like no show after no show after no show. And I come back to my house and I'm crying. And I'm staring up at God, going, God, why did you do this? I'm yelling. Okay, I'm not going to yell here. God, why did you get me in this stupid business? Why? I'm trying to feed my family, and I thought you brought me here for a reason. And I don't see that reason. Were you just playing with me? I mean, I was just blaming it all on God, this terrible day. And God being the loving God that he is, did not strike me down with lightning, although he could have been more than justified, right? So I go into my house after screaming, my voice is raw. And at the time, our three kids were in one room. We kind of had like a nursery type environment. And so I peek into the kids' room and I saw them, listening to them sleeping. I don't know if you guys ever do this, ever watch your kids sleep. There's this calming thing that happens when you watch your kids sleep. And it's almost like a prayer. You parents, you know what I mean. And I watched them, all three of them sleeping. And I looked at them, how much do I love them? How much would I do for them? I would die for them. I would die for them in a nanosecond. If it took me to save them, I would die for them. And you guys know what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, I start thinking, with all my anger at God, I realize as much as I love my children, how much does He love me? He loves me way more than I could even fathom. And God would never lead me into something that I couldn't finish. He led me into the Alliance, gang. And He never would lead me into something I couldn't finish. He would never lead me into something that He wouldn't equip me. You know, God does not call the equipped, He equips the called. And I knew that this was just one little bump along the way of my road. But my greater cause was my children, providing for my wife and my kids. And every time I thought about that moment, see, my belief about myself goes back to that moment when I made that realization, watching my kids sleep. And that's the belief, that's the memory that I bring back anytime that I have any kind of fear or trepidation trying to creep in, saying that, Alex, you can't do that. Alex, you can't make partner. Alex, you'll never build a business, as big as, all the other 3-4 letter IMOs out there. You'll never do it. And I keep thinking back to, why would God ever get me into business that He wouldn't equip me for it, number one. Number two, He wouldn't let me finish it. He wouldn't let me finish out why He brought me in it, right? And so that was my greater cause. My greater cause is something that I knew that this is something I was called to do and something I was going to do. And no matter how hard it got, bring it on, baby. Because God would never get me into something that wasn't worth something. Because anything worth something is worth paying a price for, right? Anything that's worth a quarter is going to be worth a quarter. But what is it worth giving your blood, sweat, and tears to something? Your time, energy, and emotion to, the things that you can invest into, that God wouldn't give it back in 100-fold if you walk in faith. The greater cause. What is your greater cause that will smash whatever fear? You're going to still feel it. But what will keep you moving forward? What will keep you moving on? Here's the next one, self-talk. What do you put in your head, baby? What are you saying to yourself? See, when you don't have a true appreciation and acceptance for who you are, and you allow yourself to be immobilized by fear, see what happens in the process is that you begin to abuse yourself. You begin to sabotage your life. You begin to sabotage your dreams. And I know you guys don't want that. You don't want to let fear do that to you. So what are you putting into your head? This is where you get back into affirmations and self-talk. Are you going to talk good about yourself? Because you don't got other people, like you're listening to your upline, he's talking good about you, or she's, but the most important voice is the one in your own head, because that's the one you're listening to all the time. The great book, Shad Hempstetter, What You Say When You Talk to Yourself. That book changed my life. I recorded those self-talk things and I listened to it while I was sleeping. Changed my life. It changed my self-talk about goals and keeping persistent and learning perseverance. Self-talk. Little by little, You don't have to eat an elephant all at the same time, one bite at a time. Take on the little fears, one fear at a time, and figure out how to overcome it. We'll help you with that. I'm running out of time here, so let me move to the next one. Big NLP thing called anchoring. Anchoring the good feelings of you feeling confident to something that will bring back those feelings right away. What I would suggest is look up NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and anchoring on YouTube. There's some tremendous things that can help you anchor positive feelings where you can bring it up immediately. Okay. This is another NLP one that's powerful. I don't have the time to go into it. Here's the thing, surround yourself with successful people, right? Surround yourself with people that are on the same path as you. Okay. Surround yourself with people that have those muscles of perseverance, of overcoming fears, because you become more like the people you hang around, right? Surround yourself with people that will support you, people that will put the good stuff in your head. This is where stage 2 success is going to be your opportunity to get around those people that will support you. Will be people that are like you, people that will care about you, people that will breathe life into you, and you will hear. Faith comes from hearing. You're going to hear story after story. You're going to hear parable after parable on these skits. You're going to hear some of the most tremendous talks. You're going to hear people breathing life in you that no one will when you're back at home. Your friends and family won't, because they don't know what this is about. But the people that love and care about you, that know what this is about, they're the ones. They're the ones that are going to speak life into you. That's how you know you can trust them speaking to you. And when you change your belief about yourself, when you change your self-image, when you change that, then anything that happens to you gets filtered through that filter. And your thoughts become positive thoughts, which creates positive feelings, which creates positive actions, which creates positive results. And it's a little by little deal, gang. It doesn't happen all at once, but every time you hang in there long enough to avail yourself of the power of association, getting around the people that love and care about you in the alliance, baby, fear ain't no big thing. Feel the fear, do it anyway. This is Alex Abian. Rock on. I'm out of here. I'll see you at Stage of Success. God bless you, man. Love you guys. Take care.